you. you. and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Let's do this first. When you're, or do you still got some time? You're waiting for people. Do you know?
No.
Might as well. That way, you got lots here, so might as well. Yes, that's a good point. She might not be. Do you think she stayed in to do this earlier?
She was right here.
Okay.
She was hiding in the closet.
Perfect. We'll do the swearing in right away. So, I'll let you lead, gather people, place people wherever you think they should be, and tell us what we should do if we're supposed to do anything.
Okay. We're just going to have Kyle come forward.
I just wanted to bring Kyle up tonight, introduce Kyle Goley. He's, we had a vacancy, our full-time EMT resigned a couple months ago. We had an interview process. We went with Kyle Goley. He comes from us, he's been on the department for a little bit. He comes from Hubbardston. He started as a call firefighter EMT over there. Graduated the Mass Fire Academy, was the honor graduate of his class. He's currently also in paramedic school, so at some point in the future he'll be able to help us as a paramedic. And as we merged the fire and EMS, we decided that the new position would be a joint fire and EMS position, not the previous one was strictly full-time EMT.
Okay.
So Kyle can do, if it's an ambulance call, he goes on the ambulance. If it's a fire call, he can cover the fire call during the day.
Okay.
He's an excellent candidate. We had some very good candidates apply for the job, and Kyle came out on top.
All right then.
And raise your right hand. This with no left. I, Kyle Goley,
I, Kyle Goley,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
all
of the duties incumbent upon me as a firefighter EMT
all the duties incumbent upon me, firefighter EMT,
and a member of the Town of Barry's Fire Department
and a member of the Town of Barry's Fire Department,
in accordance with
in accordance with
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
and the bylaws, rules, and directives of the Town of Barry.
and the bylaws, rules, and directives of the Town of Barry.
I will do so agreeably
I will do so agreeably
and to the best of my knowledge and ability,
and to the best of my knowledge and ability,
in an effort to preserve life
in an effort to preserve life
and property
and property
from the elements of fire and disaster.
from the elements of fire and disaster,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And we have his badge, his official badge.
All right.
This is white hand, by the way.
Don't stick to me either.
Shove it.
Flesh counts. Just push it in there. Second call. Fire.
That's not yours if you want. And then I'm going to have you initial next to each one of these. And then you're going to date and sign.
Six.
And then you'll just need to make sure that you complete the online ethics training
Okay.
and drop off a copy of the training once you've completed it to my office. Okay?
All right.
All set?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot for everybody showing up with the support. Thank you.
What do you try that?
All right. We'll open with public comments.
I'd like to address the selectman is James Higgins, lifelong resident of Barry. I have two questions. One, I'd like to find out, when are we gonna get this meeting room straightened out with charter or whoever's in charge of it now, so you guys don't sound like a bunch of monkeys? You can, if you listen to it or watch it, it's ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's gobbled, it's all in together. Can't understand a word you're saying. The volume's terrible. I think it's an insult to Barry to try to watch you guys after a meeting that you can't understand what you're saying. It's all mixed in together, like, that's what it sounds like if you listen to it, if you watched it.
Okay.
Okay? The other thing is, where do they get the programming from? Some of the programs I just watched about 15, 20 minutes ago are 2.5, 3 years old. It's about time we get new programming from Charter, Spectrum, whoever's running it. It's
Okay.
junk. It's old movies, it's old shows that have been on there for the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm a member of it for many years, and I think it's getting ridiculous watching the same stuff over and over and over.
You're talking about the channels like 194, 195, the three.
Yeah,
Okay.
but all the way down through. They're old programming. The stuff I watched tonight before I came here was stuff they've shown on for the last 3 or 4 years. And I think it's time something's been improved about it with the money we're paying out for them. And everything else as far as trying to watch the reruns of your meeting is ridiculous. It's jabbled, or gobbled, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm not probably speaking that way right now myself, because I usually get nervous when I get in front of anybody. But I think the rest of the town's saying the same thing, because I've talked to quite a few people in town.
Okay.
Right, Kath?
Well, I agree with you, Jim, that the last meeting you had, as you people talked, there was an echo.
Echo,
That
all
you
the time.
couldn't watch the meeting, but that was on 194.
That's the one I'm watching on
But if you went on the
194.
computer and watched it on the Town of Area Facebook, it does not do that.
Well, that's good. You're on
Okay, so
Facebook, I'm not.
So it's a
the
charter.
TV's better, I mean, the
Charter
computer's
issue.
better than the TV.
Right. But the point is that the town has the money, this room's been upgraded how many times?
Right.
To make this room state of the art.
Well, we gotta find out if it's the room or the transfer of the information to cable, so it might be another piece of equipment.
If it's coming clear over the internet, it must be
It is very
being
clear
recorded
over the
clearly,
internet,
so
yes.
it's gotta be an issue with what's
Yes,
happening
but when you watch it on
between here and
194,
Charter.
It's something
The
going
echo
on,
was
Greg,
horrible.
that,
You couldn't even
to
watch
me,
Okay.
I'm not happy with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Not the money we have to pay out, or the town has to pay out for it. To me, it stinks,
Mhm.
okay?
Well, that's the first I've heard of it, but
Wow.
I've seen some online. Whenever I've looked online, they've been perfect.
But as for the old
But-
thing staying on,
but
I think that's.
It certainly must be either something they transition to Charter or something the Charter's
So
doing.
part of
Jim,
it's the
I
fact,
can show you how to do it, it's very easy.
part of
to
it's
do.
the fact
I
that
don't
when
know
it
how to
leaves
do it.
this,
But I understand. We gotta look to see what we can do.
Yeah.
part of the fact is when it leaves this room, it goes over to the basement of the old town hall. It's basically transferred from, the video over to directly to the live broadcast. And then it's kind of funneled through a smaller port because they don't have the fiber connection that we do here. I'm looking right now at trying to move that setup back into this building with some of the space that we have open, so that way they have the direct line to the fiber, and it rectifies some of those issues. But we know that the sound has been an issue for a while. We're working on stuff on getting the right fix for that too. So working on it.
You believe the old communication wiring out of town hall is affecting the telecast?
Yes. Because it's just the speed at which it's being uploaded.
The speed and the bandwidth and
Yep.
the fiber is 10 times that of anything else.
Right.
So-
If we remove that portion of it, move it over here and go directly fiber, it'll probably
That would make
rectify
sense.
that.
So town hall has our interface with
Hello.
Yes.
charter.
Yes. I believe that a number of years ago, the intent was that they wanted to create some sort of local access office in the basement down there, and that didn't end up coming to fruition, but all the setup is all down there. So we're gonna look at the option of moving it back over here.
Now regarding the questions about repeated programming.
Yep, I can talk with our
Um,
local.
I think that's a good idea, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, well, we just gotta figure out
Yeah.
how far back is too far back. And then also figure out if there's alternate programming that isn't just meetings, and what type of programming that is, where we get it from, how we can add, what we can do. So,
I think myself, I said, I don't think other people have the same problem, but to me, the money that we're paying out for it, whatever the cost is, a lot of people don't have, go with computers and all that stuff, most of them on the TV. So if they're getting the same stuff, they ain't gonna be happy.
yep,
At least I'm not. My wife was in the same thing, she did the same thing. It's, why is it so, no, it's messed up, all right? And I
Okay.
think as far as some of whatever new programming they're putting on is still old hat.
okay. So we gotta figure out where they're pulling from and
Where they're pulling
find a
from,
cutoff line, like
what they're selling to us, I don't know.
nothing older than a year maybe, and then,
Yeah, it's, I mean, the same programs are going back, I just watched them 20 years ago.
it might be simply a software program that just grabs files from the records and just,
Yeah, I know.
sometimes random programs seem a lot less random because they always seem to grab the same file every time, but
Seems that way.
sometimes you can change the database so it only is pulling from a more recent.
Like I said, I watched.
But we'll find out. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Were those, was that, or you
That's
mentioned
pretty
two
much-
questions, but it was
that's
those two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those two, yeah.
I would just like to comment on the fire department and commend it for how far it's come. It's doing fantastic.
All right.
I called at 5:30 this morning, then they had a mutual aid call around about 10 o'clock to Hardwick, and both calls were staffed and met quickly, so it was good. And now that he's got a combination, he'll have someone at the fire department, so as soon as you get one more person showing, they can get out, so it's good. Getting that fresh truck out's important.
Yeah, I commend the fire department, they're doing a great job.
I agree.
Thank you.
I just add a little bit more to that, I didn't get a chance to ask them, but both be under the fire jurisdiction. Why don't they just put everything already under EMS
In the budget?
on the whole budget instead of having fire and ambulance personnel? Put them
My
all in.
understanding, it has something to do with the funding mechanism, because the ambulance receipts from the year before are intended to be spent towards the ambulance budget.
Right.
So we
Absolutely.
create the separate
Right,
ambulance
oh, yeah.
budget.
Okay,
It's more of an accounting thing to show this money is here and it's set aside for that, and that the ambulance budget isn't intended to be larger than the
Well, I
expected
just
revenues.
Trying to find out why separate is.
But they're still managed by the same chief, obviously, so,
But how the
but I hear what
budget's-
you're saying, it's
The
a,
budget's created differently. It's based off the receipts from the prior year, which goes into the book, so it's, the whole way it's funded is differently than the fire department
Well, like I
itself.
said,
There's an
they just-
anticipation of receipts and using the past, prior year's receipts for the budget numbers.
And each department receives different grants for
Right.
specifically each department.
yeah. I mean,
I got one question.
there is a line though where we gotta just pay attention to use of personnel and which
Mhm.
account's being used for what and what are they doing at the time of that. But that's really getting into the
Yeah, I
weeds, and you
understand.
gotta just kinda trust the chief to use that appropriately.
But the ambulances don't come out of are they gonna combine everything with one budget? Are they still gonna be separate budgets because they never were?
There's still gonna be separate budgets, an ambulance budget and a fire department budget.
Okay,
That's my understanding. I don't know how we can really get out of that accounting-wise right now. Nor do I necessarily think it's useful to get out of that. I think it's actually better for us to have
well,
the
they're
two
gonna be
separate detailed budgets so we better
They're
understand.
bills, but, you know, I just curious.
creation of the personnel lines, but I think equipment and operations still remain separate.
Yeah, but the ambulance salaries are the
Right,
major
yeah.
portion of their budget, which is also
Just thinking now
comparing receipts to,
it's technically one department, but I think as far as the personnel stuff, as far as integrating it, maybe a little bit better now we're creating the positions of firefighter EMTs, so that way it's not trying to split hairs with what account is one person being paid on.
Well, it's still
Yeah, I
two
see
very
what you're
different
saying.
departments, because at this point, we're staffing the ambulance, ALS service 24 hours a day. That service in itself has to be staffed and has to have personnel. We don't staff the fire department. This is our first time to staff a firefighter during the working hours of the day specifically. So we have one there in a very small amount, but we staff that 24 hours a day at ALS service. And that's gonna be the big difference. We may or may not get to move towards more firefighters. So now we have an inspector in the fire department, and we'll have a firefighter over there, so we have a couple, but the salaries are still very different and offset, and the ambulance is the thing we have to staff 24. So I think it's smart to still keep it separate. It's very easy to delineate between the two.
yeah.
And just now that he has a firefighter EMT, he can fill in on the EMT side if he needs to. For sure. A lot of times what we're waiting for, not the first truck, but when we get a second call, we want to send the second truck, we're waiting for a second. And if we have a firefighter EMT in the station, he can go with that second.
Yeah.
You know, it means one less person on call in the fire truck, not the end of the world, but it gives us an extra EMT available to go immediately, which I think is important, because that's where our money comes back in.
Yeah.
We're not getting anything off the fire trucks.
So that's generally the understanding of the budgeting in there.
That kind of answers my question, because if you get, like you say, you get the extra men already there. So they
Yeah.
can jump on the ambulance and second one call comes in for it. So it's, you still got two separate departments, two separate personnel, so as long as they're in the department already, you get paid by whatever.
Right.
They're already there.
And similarly, the fire chief's salary only shows up in the fire department budget. It's
Okay.
not split between the two, so it's,
All right.
you're right, there's, yeah.
It's more of the fire chief is running both departments than it's one department.
Well,
It's a better way to look at it.
It was separate, Greg, until just about roughly
Well,
2 years ago.
they still are. They're technically the headquarters is over in the new public service building with the police.
Right.
That's where the headquarters is.
Yeah.
You know, due to the cable issues and not being able to fax and things, they spend most of the time still over at the firehouse. And it's set up better with a better kitchen and in a place they can sleep when they're in the overnight shift. So they got to be there for the foreseeable
I
future,
understand
but
that.
they're still basically based out of the other building.
Okay, well, we're talking about that.
Yeah.
What's the holdup on not getting the radio equipment up to date?
That's a great question.
Why?
I'd love to know the answer.
Why does it take so long?
I'd love to know the answer.
I mean, the building's been up for almost 2 years now.
Mhm.
It's about time. Somebody got off their can and went after whoever's in charge. I'm not pointing fingers.
Well, the gentleman we had doing our IT, he seemed to be slow in getting projects done. He gave us estimates and time that didn't seem to pan out.
Yeah.
And he's no longer in our employ. We have somebody new, so it's gonna be a matter of time. Hopefully within a month or so, you'll have answers for anything and everything with new services, but, no, yes.
I'm just wondering what's still outstanding. 'cause-
Oh, I'm just saying, we don't have the.
Did you get all the copper lines in for the
Yeah,
fax and
everything's
everything
in.
else they
Okay,
needed?
Everything is in.
There we go.
So,
So really, what's
Yeah.
outstanding is they don't really have the kitchen services in that building or space for it that they have up at the
just
fire
at this
station.
point right now, operationally, it makes a lot more sense for them to be working out of Station 1 than separately.
Yeah.
So what's the
operation-
plan?
the
Moving forward operationally, what's the
for
plan?
right now, operationally is, I'll defer to the chief on this, but basically status quo unless something significantly changes, because right now the fireman and ambulance work together in Station 1.
Okay, so as far as we understand, the plan is not to put fire or ambulance housed
Full-time.
in public safety building at all.
I mean, there's no sleeping quarters
We have a
down there.
brush truck over there.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
that-
it's more of like a ancillary station at this
all
point.
right. I'd rather just say it, so people aren't wondering when are they gonna move in.
Yeah.
Well,
Does not appear like we're in a situation unless we do an addition to that building.
I've always said unless they can sleep there, they can't really pull shifts there. It's just a couch. So there's no place for
Right.
the overnight shift. they're expected to sleep in the overnight, they're not there doing duties.
I know,
It's, and there is no place for them to sleep, so.
Are you saying there's no place for them to sleep at the new building?
My understanding is they got a garage in one room. Everything else was
They have
police.
a love-seated table.
That's my understanding. Am I
counter
correct?
With an oven and a microwave and a sink. It's.
That's how it was
This
designed
building.
and laid out and got built.
this
It
table-
was
this table would fit in the
80% a police building and 20% a garage and one little room for the people to have a couch.
That's unbelievable.
It's how it
Unfortunately,
happened.
that's
So
what
we're
was-
living with it. There's a chance maybe
It's all
we
those
invest in an
questions.
addition that gives them their own. It doesn't even necessarily have to be attached. It could be its own little freestanding. But there's a possibility you can make room to grow in there, but I'm not saying it's going to be worth the investment if what we really want to do in the future is rebuild the fire station. Because I know that's something we've been talking about. They've been living out of an old brick building that's been, they're, holding it together with tape and glue and filling in blanks, but it's an old building and they're growing out of that just as quick. So it might be better to look at a better comprehensive fire station thing than doing more with. And then we can figure out the benefit of what we can do with that garage and that room if it ends up being not as important to fire department and ambulance for regular use. Could be a good place to store equipment, could be a variety of things could come out of it, but
Could be
doesn't
a very-
sound like
very
it's-
nice place to store the hazmat trailer, and the rescue trailer, and the quad trailer. And there's
So it'd
something
have
like
to be
that.
something big, right,
Had to
that's
be
exactly what I
something for it,
meant.
but
Things
it's- but
that,
that's
by
what-
storing it, it's better protected, it's not sitting in a parking garage, weatherized and all that.
That's for capital planning and the chief to ask what he wants and figure out how they want to proceed. There's
But it's a,
a lot of possibilities, but the station there is not very usable. It has been the copper issue and things, but they have all the key fobs now, finally, I don't know.
Double check it with chief.
So that could still
but
be the issue too. They also couldn't get in without the key fobs because they weren't straightened out.
I thought that'd been straightened out, but I'll double check.
But they make the calls.
Yep.
They get the second bus out of there when they need it. You make 2 calls often. I don't know how often, but many times a week we have both ambulances out at the same time.
okay. We should sometime this year, though, have fire chief and police chief sit down, discuss long-term plans of what they think they could do with that, and then start creating a plan of, that way we can start moving forward in a direction of some sort.
I think you could even start with just the fire chief. I mean, it is his section. It's, unless he's going to give something up to the police department and not utilize it, then we wouldn't need to bother the police chief with it.
Well, that's what I mean. If all he's gonna use is the garage, then there's an extra room that the police might be able to use for something. And that's why I said maybe just have a quick talk and find out if Rob ever plans on using that little room.
I don't even know what they do over there, if they have anything in there. I mean,
Me either, so that's why it's just worth asking the question and
well, they
figure
could
it
use
out.
it for equipment storage. They could use it for medical storage. They have to store their stuff
Yeah.
someplace, the supplies. Might be a good place for a lockup over there too, separate from, because there's really no lockup over in Station 1. So I
Okay.
don't know what they do with the meds now.
That might be what
And
they're
that
doing
may-
now.
May be a great place for it there too.
Okay.
But worth asking. And I would doubt if he plans to utilize it and keep trucks there. Bays are good, but the other space is not.
All right. Any other public comments, new topic? Otherwise, we'll get on to the regular agenda. Okay. Annual appointments.
So, I've been working on this with Alan. Apparently there was a little bit of a glitch, as we saw in the last few meetings ago, trying to get the appointments all straightened out. We have a meeting with, or we have a call scheduled on Wednesday with the vendor to try to get all the appointments and all the glitches out of the system, make sure that we're presenting an actual list of the appointments that are due to for this year, but she was able to confirm all the election worker appointments that are gonna be due, that are due at the beginning of this year with the, primaries coming up. I figured it would be beneficial to at least get that list of appointments done.
So,
Okay. Well, we have a sheet for the record that has a list of about 40, 45 election workers. If you want to know everybody's name, feel free to request a copy of that. But the motion I'm suggesting would be a motion referencing the whole sheet of everybody. Does that make sense? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the recommended list of election workers.
second the motion.
Call for vote?
Aye.
Aye. Done. Next on the list is
Back to minutes.
FY18. Oh, right, I guess I could do that. Approved meeting minutes of June 18,
I
2018.
wasn't sure if you guys had approved these at the last meeting or not. I haven't really had a chance to make sure we cross all T's and dot all I's from a meeting that I missed, but
I
I
found
included
one
these.
typo in this one already. so,
Oh, okay,
Why don't we table it then?
okay.
I'm gonna table those for now.
We'll table them.
I'm reading through the rest of it. There's one typo on the first page, and I was just trying to scan through the rest, but I'd rather read it.
Just table them both. Is the June 26th one you have a copy of or not? Was that one you were involved in?
Should be. June 26th.
Oh, you were absent, so that's probably that one you recuse yourself on? No. Oh, no, this is one that,
That's the one I didn't get a notice of.
This actually doesn't look like there's anything in it.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, no.
Sorry. I saw it on the list and I just went in and printed it off.
So that,
It just goes to executive session and that's it.
okay. So yeah, we'll table, revise, et cetera, those.
Sorry about that.
FY18 appropriation transfers.
Alright, so here are the appropriation transfers as proposed by the accountant. I'm trying to get a finance committee affirmed for this Thursday to review and approve them. I want to present them to you to see if you want to take tentative action pending finance committee's approval tonight or hold off until the next meeting.
The general information to the public, big picture, $125,582.81 is looking to be transferred from various accounts to fill accounts that overran. That's just over 1%? Am I doing my math right? Of the budget?
Yeah,
So we had again, we have the list here. I am comfortable with it. I am curious, FY17 capital improvement debt being transferred from the bottom section.
Mhm.
Just curious, I just found it interesting, we're transferring from an FY17
It was an F,
number to an FY18.
but it was just the way that the line was labeled. Because
Okay.
you create a line item.
Okay, it
in
was
the
a
budget.
FY18 budget item referencing an FY17
Yeah.
debt.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that, it just threw me for a loop when I read that. I was like, I missed that earlier. Okay. I mean, I'm comfortable with it at the moment. I don't know if you gentlemen have any questions or thoughts you want to.
No. No, looks fine.
We have a motion for the Board of Selectmen to approve pending, and then Finance Committee can make their own vote. If they don't agree, they can come back and we can revise or re-vote later. closing this up helps us meet our deadlines for closing the books for the year too, so.
So we need a motion to approve the transfer of funds to cover
Yeah,
those, is what we're saying?
yeah, as listed on this list of whatever it was, 715, the front page.
I'll second.
Call for vote?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So it's on you.
You have a problem with not having enough members on the finance committee,
Possibly.
because there's only 4, so all 4 of those have to be at the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Have a quorum.
Yeah.
Short 3 people.
We definitely do need people to want to participate in the finance committee.
I applied last year, never heard a thing.
Do you still have the application? As far as you know?
He's thrown the trash.
Well, let's
Would you get it?
revisit
Who do you think?
if we could look to see if we have that on file. If not, Jim, if you're still interested, he's gonna look to see if we still have it on file, but if we don't, could you just
If you don't,
resubmit
Paul
it?
should have, 'cause that's where I dropped it off to.
Okay,
The only appointing authority is Paul, so I have
Right.
to.
That's where I was told to leave it off, so that's what I gave it to him.
understood, but
If you don't, I can fill another one out, or whatever. I'd like to get on some committee in town, because I'm not on anything else right now.
all right. If you could follow with Paul. But if you don't mind filling out another
I can
application,
fill out another one, no problem.
so if Paul says, I don't have it, we can just say, if you come up to the office, we have it here for you right now.
Hey,
Just, again, because
I'll talk with
I'm,
him tomorrow when I'm not busy and see what's going on and talk to, get another application filled out.
I appreciate it, sir.
I'd like to get on something.
Well,
That one will
We
keep you
need it.
busy.
Huh?
That one will keep you busy.
I don't have a problem with it, because I was busy for almost 40 years between the sport and everything else, so,
Mhm.
I don't have a problem. I'd like to get on something to show that I'm interested in the town, which I barely missed.
and this is an important one, so I appreciate it.
Well, I'd like to do something.
So,
I'll check with.
if we're lucky, maybe Paul can get that appointed by tomorrow, so they might be able to get a quorum by Thursday.
No.
Wednesday.
Well, he mentioned Thursday, so I'm hoping Thursday. I think it's slipping every day, depending on the answers of the members. All right, so that is done, DOS approved. Next item, Spartan Race temporary liquor license.
So I'm working on actually updating the way that we are doing our permitting, because when I first got on, we invested in this Viewpoint software program, and typically the way it's been is that everything gets put into the system, permits gets generated, it comes down here, you guys sign off on it, and that permit just gets mailed to the applicant. I'm working on the final stages of basically integrating this fully so that way people can apply for their licenses through the program itself. And then with the approval of the board, it's one click and permit pre-signed gets emailed to them. So rather than bringing you guys a copy of a license that says here with your signature, it's gonna get mailed to them with a signature on the application itself. They'll get a digital copy of your signature instead. So that's why you don't have like a physical license here.
Okay.
With these ones, I'm just letting you guys know if you're wondering where to sign. I
Okay.
can go back and print one up if you want, but I'm hoping to move to this type, to kind of bring us a little bit more to the 21st century.
Yeah, we're almost there here.
Almost there, knocking on the door.
Okay, now.
So if you guys do approve the license, you just sign like somewhere on the second page, just so that way I have a record of approval.
we've done it before for the events, and I always ask, just to keep hearing it, what's the fee for a one-day liquor license?
Fee for a one-day liquor license is $100 plus $5.
We need to visit our liquor fees in town. This is, we're way past. It should be an avenue to collect a little more money on fees like that. If the fee becomes extravagant, no one will do it, and you don't want to cut people out of it. But I think there's reasonable money made from people selling alcohol, and it's certainly reasonable to get a better fee. We might want to visit other towns that do these things and look what their rates are. I think we're going to find we're far behind.
From the last time I kind of looked at, not here, but the last time I looked at overall rates, the one-day license fee is pretty, it's on par. I think it's more of our annual fees might be a little bit lacking at this point, but I'll do another survey and see where the
I'd like
market's
to
at.
check them both so we can visit in the future and some fee schedules, like other things we looked at, that just haven't been visited for 20 years in town, and we need to look at these and get them updated. But I'll make a motion to approve the one-day liquor license for the event.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Do you have anyone else's?
Done.
Just sign this page and get a digital form and send it to me.
Guess we just sign that, and he'll scan it or something.
I have a question about, Jimmy being on the finance committee. I think Greg said they wanted bankers, advisors, and accountants, so now it's gonna take, Jimmy a banker?
It's the moderator's decision at the moment.
Okay.
There you go.
I have asked for people that have that background to come forward and apply, and if they do, that's fantastic. And if they don't, there's not a lot we can do about it. And since we have no right to recuse anyways, we have nothing to do with this.
Okay.
I don't argue fruitless points.
Sometimes it works.
All right, next item, CMRPC grant administration agreement, am I correct?
Yes, so we received a $39,000 grant from the state for Green Communities grant for upgrades to the installation and heating system in Station 1, and also the installation of a electric vehicle charging station at this building. So part of the grant application is also $7,500 that goes toward the grant, toward grant administration. Since CMRPC basically did all the legwork in submitting the grant for us, they'll also do that grant administration stuff, the amount of money that they put in. So this basically just authorizes them to act on behalf of the town as grant administrator to Green Communities.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 3,500. Second page.
They only have 10 hours for project facilitation.
That's roughly how it breaks down. charge you anymore.
What do we have for two
We
cars?
ended up spending 12 hours, so we have to charge you more.
Right.
That's not how it works out. Basically, this is how they anticipate the breakdown of their hours in the full grant administration. And, you know, I believe last year they actually had updated the procedure from Green Community's perspective of how, how they kind of give out the money and the grant manager does it. So it went very seamless last year with the lighting upgrades. So I think that they have a pretty good handle as far as how much facilitation that they're going to need to do. It's basically act as liaison between the town and the contractor that the state has already pre-approved.
What was the amount of the grant again?
About $39,000.
Close to 10% for our admin fee. Which I don't think is out of line with people get for grant writers if they write grants for you, for commission for achieving grants. So I don't have a problem with that. I'd make a motion to approve this memorandum and CMRPC to manage this grant for us with the fee of $3,500.
I will second.
Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye. Do you have a copy of this from this side? Thank you. Okay. And then the CMRPC delegate.
So I have information there about how annually the planning board selects a alternate, or I'm sorry, the select board selects an alternate for the planning board member to represent the town for CMRPC. Last year, Phil Hubbard was the appointed member.
The alternate.
I'm sorry, the alternate member as appointed by the select board. So I just wanted to give this to you guys, see whether or not you want to appoint one yourselves, or if there's anybody from the community that was interested in acting as the alternate. But it can't be me, sorry.
So the member has to be on the planning board, the alternate just has to be a resident.
Yes.
How soon do they need this? Can we open this up and let people volunteer if they'd like?
Yeah, I'm sure that they don't mind. It doesn't give us a.
Doesn't mean Phil wouldn't want to volunteer to do it again, but
I mean, basically the next quarterly meeting is September 13th. That's just basically when they would have to be appointed by if the planning board delegate isn't available. So really, I think that they can get that at any time.
So we have to do, I also have to do the delegate as well. We appoint the delegate.
The planning board appoints the delegate, the select board appoints the alternate.
Okay. Just read them both on the page, that's why I said it, but I did read that. So they're not gonna appoint a delegate unless someone volunteers to do it. Because that'd be meaningless. We'll get someone that doesn't show. Shall I vote to table that for now, until the next meeting?
Yep.
All right, motion to table it?
Second that.
Okay.
So anybody interested in participating in the CMRPC's Regional Planning Commission as an alternate, they generally have at least 4 quarterly meetings, and then there are some subcommittees that come together. So depending on what you would like to do, please step forward and let us know. Otherwise, the board will come up with somebody, probably one of us 3.
I could ask the planning board too if they want to elect anybody else.
Have an alternate.
If they have an
Board too.
interest.
Yeah.
So,
It's geared towards them, so it'd be great if they had someone that wanted to do an alternate from there as well, but they may not, they do a lot.
a lot of times though, there's crossover between what planning boards and select boards do, and having another voice just gives a different perspective. All right, common victualler license, Red Tomato Pizza Restaurant.
Same thing with this one. Different format.
Is this the Quabbin Pizza Replacement
Yes.
Company?
Yep.
Or whatever
We
you want to
already
call it.
transferred the liquor license to
Yep.
that.
That's gone to the ABCC for their approval, so this is just for the common vic.
I make a motion, we grant him the particular license. As
We have a second?
Red Tomato Pizza.
You make, oh, okay, second.
Call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Just put red into that sticker.
Well, you signed it?
Yeah, it's only for our internal record, really.
What type of business requires a common victualler license?
Just about anything that's kind of like a restaurant or.
Something that
Kinda
cooks food
sells-
on site and
Yeah.
serves it?
Yep.
Do we have a new business in town that needs to submit one of these? Do we have a new business in town that needs to submit one of these?
I will look into that to see if that's a requirement.
I didn't know if they had one down there.
I know it hadn't crossed our paths yet, but
Yeah.
that's why I was wondering, is it a different type of
The
business? I'm not
state-
sure of.
Yeah, I mean, the state definition of it is pretty ambiguous, so, but I'll just confirm and maybe send them a little friendly reminder.
Because they need this license for the Board of Health to actually have Board of Health inspections.
They should
So
already-
that's where I'm
hopefully have
thinking
that.
if
Right.
we gotta be,
Yeah, it's kind of a,
if this doesn't happen, then it doesn't get on somebody's radar to, oh, we should just do a normal.
the one thing I'm just thinking is whether or not it's entering into the premises or not. That's the other thing, is if it's still in a walk-up window,
Oh.
does it make it a different classification versus a sit-down?
If it was a food truck, it does. If it's if they're preparing them inside, I think it still needs to be inspected, Board of Health and everything else. It's a different standard, but I'd like to find
I will
out.
double check this.
I'm not trying to shut them down, I'm just trying to get it.
No, it's
get
more
it
just
right.
let's
People-
make sure we get it right.
People love the place, and I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure it's going how it's supposed to be.
It's the cross on the T's and the dot on the I's.
It's about-
Exactly. If we let it sit for 2 years, all of a sudden it's a precedent setting, we ignored it, and now we can't fix it.
Why are they paying, or why do they have to pay?
Catch it when we see it, that's all. Okay, so that's done.
Yep.
Next item came up was a sick bank discussion. This is a concept of employees that have either excessive or unused sick time that they've met their max, they can't roll it over to the next year, or very similar situations. They can donate the value in money into an account where, depending on the policies and procedures written up on how to use the account, other employees that may have expended their total sick time, maybe because they have a long-term health issue, something came up, they can request to use the donated sick bank. In other words, it's a communal use of all non-represented employees. Each union would have to do it themselves, but all non-represented employees could have a sick bank where if an employee has time that they are not going to use, they can donate it to the sick bank, and then that value of money is available in exchange for someone else's needs. And we would have to obviously write up a policy on when you can request to use the sick bank. And that would get into some time and really get through the weeds to make sure we do it and don't create loopholes where it's possible particular employees might want to abuse the fact that they can always use sick time, just saying, I'll just use a sick bank because it won't matter. So that is a concern, but the other thing is the positive is sometimes even if it's not your own health, but your family, and you need family medical, leave, you're constantly taking it, you run out of sick time, but someone you love is still at home and needs care, and you need to be able to split up your week and do some things to keep it going, this could help people in those situations. It was brought to our attention by an employee that they thought it might be a good idea for us to review and discuss. So that's the topic, and I'm just laying it out for discussion.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
So I just.
So you're saying that everyone's entitled to 15 sick days a year. So if they reach their 15 sick days, if the next year comes, they get another 15, but they already have 15, they can donate that 15?
What's-
No.
What's the accrual amount of
No.
days we have for sick days?
My understanding is you can max out at like 700 hours.
I believe that's it. Off the top of my
You
head.
get 15 a year you accrue, but if you don't use it, it keeps adding and rolling for your career here in the town.
Right.
So if you're someone that says maybe you reach, and I don't know if 700 is the right number, but if we throw out 700, and you reach a point where you got 400 and you're like, I don't ever expect to need to use a full year of sick time in my last 2 years before I retire, whatever. You can take a portion of your sick time and put it into this bank. Now, you no longer can use it outside of the policies that allow use of that sick bank. So it's no longer the same rules that allow you to use that sick time like you would have if it was your own accrued sick time. But it also means any other employee could make an application through the town administrator, HR, and request to use sick time in the bank that other employees have stored in there over time. So any other employee that's either maybe you've reached your 728 max hours and you still got at least 5 years left in your career. So every year you got 15 hours just being thrown away. So every year you just throw 15 hours into that sick bank. The bigger concern there when you start looking at long term is setting up the right financial policies so we fund that so it doesn't create an unexpected huge bang to someone's operational budget, because this isn't expected to be used that year. Nor now it's interesting if an employee leaves, resigns, whatever, we still owe them, I think, that 720 some hours if they accrued it all. So is it only vacation that you get?
You only get vacation time, and I think that there's at a certain amount of years you might get a certain portion of that sick time, but you never get the full value.
Okay. So that would make, but either way, every once in a while we have that just with employee turnover, this unexpected hit. How do I deal with the 2, 4, 6, however many weeks of vacation we got to pay out? If we're doing a sick bank, we've got to look at it in a bigger picture and the long-term impact of, okay, something really bad happened, but we know that they should get through it in 6 months, but they might need to use as much sick time as they can to handle the situation. The sick bank gives that opportunity. It can also give a whole bunch of headaches based on everybody and what they think about everybody else, and we'll just leave it at that. It becomes very subjective in how someone feels, well, how sick are they, or how sick is someone else, which would eventually just add another nightmare to any select board, because we're going to be the ones that everybody's saying, how sick are they? When the truth is, if the program's set up and the policies are in place, we're just following a policy. That policy, apparently, it's the Board of Selectmen's to create and approve and enact. The key is you can only create it if you also create the financial plan to fund it, so that if it does happen, it's meeting the intent and it's funded, so it doesn't throw off a fiscal year's budget or give us another $125,000 transfer at the end of the year because things just happened we couldn't deal with.
Well, first of all, how many towns would do this, Andrew,
I mean, there's a number of towns that do this, but in a technical sense, we've actually, under the police union, have already adopted this procedure, but it hasn't been officially created yet. This request to bring it up was by somebody who was a non-union member who wanted to donate to a sick bank, stating that it had been established. I did speak with Labor Council on this, and he basically had said that, this is pretty much just relegated to those in that union to use as a sick bank. And it clearly states too that it's to be administered by a committee, and that committee being 2 members of the union, the police chief and myself. So going outside of that, anybody else who's, you know, looking to establish a sick bank, it would have to be under its own specific terms, whether it be the non-union employees or the, you know, the DPW union itself. Because I know I did have a request from the DPW union shortly after this to look into a similar type arrangement. But that might be subject to collective bargaining rather than just establishing it.
They would have to, right, the next time around, introduce that.
I think it's a good idea, but are you saying that, say I worked my year and I've only used up, no, we're talking days here, not hours, correct?
Well, we're
It's
talking,
kind of hard to
right.
talk hours, isn't it?
So the way it's set up in the.
Once it gets into the sick bank, you're talking dollars, because it's got to get converted back to someone's hourly rate. So it's not an hours or a days of sick time that goes into the bank. It's this person had 15 days of sick time and they get paid $15 an hour. That amount of money goes into the sick bank.
Yes.
And then if someone else was sick, they don't get the $15 an hour rate. They get whatever their rate is for sick time.
But you can accrue 75 sick days a year, correct?
15 a year.
I mean, a year, but
You
up to
establish, or you
What?
get up to 15 per year, but you can keep up to 75.
Up to 75.
So say you're
75.
under the sick leave article in the police department's union, it only allows a member to contribute up to 2 days each year.
Which I
So
think
it's
is a
capped.
good idea. So say a year, by the year's end, I have 13 days, I could donate 2 days to the bank,
Right.
and the next year I would accumulate
Yeah.
another 15.
The thing is though, it has to be contributed on July 1st of that
Mhm.
year. So you
Okay.
can't decide that, you know, May 3rd, I still got plenty of time left, I'm gonna done
Right.
2 days in the
Right.
bank and then I'm just gonna get it back next
Yeah.
month. You have to basically say, I'm gonna give it on July 1st, I plan on giving it every July 1st unless I decide otherwise.
Well, you don't have to make a repeat
It
thing.
says that,
Well, that's the police union.
right,
Okay.
I'm giving, this is the only thing that we have established at this time. We don't have anything in our regular policy, or our regular.
And their
personnel.
contributions need to be made prior to July 1st, and no one contributed, therefore they have an unfunded bank at this point.
Right,
And the next chance to fund it is before next July 1st.
right, that's where we stand.
Is there a window, or do they have until next July 1st, so they got all year now to do
They
it?
may commit to donate it anytime between now and next July 1st, but it doesn't officially start until they've had a commitment of hours to the bank.
Yeah,
So
okay,
next
July
time-
1st was just so that
So the
we can
kickoff.
wrap up the accounting at the end of a fiscal year.
Right.
What have you not used this fiscal year that you can,
Because you're
place
gonna be
into it.
getting new ones for the next year,
Right.
so.
right. And it depends on what you've already been able to continue to roll over. You know, you may not be waiting for 15, so in other words, someone might already have 40 days in the bank, and it's February, and they're like, put 10 days in there, because I know my buddy's gonna need that in about a week.
My opinion.
I'm just saying, that's what it sounded like. There was no, like, you can't do it. It's not like from June 1st to June 30th is your window to make this transfer. And that's not necessarily bad. If someone can do that for their colleague and they know the colleague is gonna need it, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. The thing is just making sure you can fund it.
The tough part is with these has always been that it never becomes a discussion item until somebody needs it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And usually when somebody needs it, everyone's, oh yeah, I'll give my sick time, I'll give my sick time. And then if it's somebody that, you know, not everybody wants to give their sick time to, then it becomes a little bit of a point of contention. So I see this as being like a blind, it's the way it's meant to be set up is as a blind contribution. You're not necessarily giving your time because you want to help that guy. You want to do it because it could help anybody else.
Right.
So.
Sick time is meant to be used for when somebody is sick. They have vacation time, which is theirs to do as they wish with. That's their compensation. They can collect money for it by cashing out, or they can use it. Sick time is only intended to assure they continue to have income if they should be ill. It's a little assurance given by the employer that they won't miss out on their money if they get ill. And 2 weeks is generally more than most people would ever use in a year. And that's the intent of it.
It's actually 3 weeks. Just to clarify, it's
And
5 working days, 15 days.
3 weeks is once again, I might be sick 5 days in a year, I don't work, if that, very unusual. I would think if we wanted to create a bank, it should be created on the person's dime, not the town's dime. The town, we have to be responsible with the town's money. We fight with our budget and struggle every year to try to be careful with money. And if we do start to allow sick bank hours, I mean, most people have lots of hours because most people don't use them. And if somebody runs out of hours, either they must have an illness or they must abuse the hours, one or the other. But if people want to donate to that person, they should be allowed to donate their vacation hours, convert those into money, and let that be taken for somebody else. I think using it as a sick bank is a dangerous, it's a slippery slope. We could start to put a lot of money out there. You know, we only pay out sick time when someone's sick. And each individual can get sick for so long and get money. But there's always going to be someone that has some long-term illness or some bad need, and it's not up to the town to fund that person for a year or something, or 6 months, because they've had an illness. That's what health insurance is for, and you know, emergency care, urgent care insurance, and short-term unemployment insurance. There's lots of ways to cover yourself and insure yourself. And we can't be the sole insurance policy for when some person has something wrong, that we're going to pay everything, because it's not our money to do that with.
Well, the key here, just,
If they
and I
donate,
see what you're saying, but
sick time's not their time to donate. It's our gift to them if they're sick.
well,
Vacation time is theirs to donate, and I'd be glad to set up a bank that people can donate vacation hours. And
but
if
what
they
I'm
can
trying to
figure out how
say
use it.
here is the annual budget, unless you're going to hire someone to replace someone that's out sick, isn't affected. It's the same number of hours you expected to pay that person every week for the whole year. Unless you're hiring a new employee, you're not changing that annual budget. You're just missing the production of that person.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that doesn't affect accomplishing the work necessary, but I am saying that generally we're not paying more when people are sick. We're losing more work.
The one exception to that, it might be the police department though, and the fact that you always have to have, you pretty much have the same amount of people on at one time, so if somebody's
Right,
calling
but that's
sick,
union, so
they're
that's a
getting-
different topic, and they already approved it.
I'm saying they're getting paid while somebody else is coming in and now working overtime, so that's the only real situation where you're gonna be losing money to have somebody really take
And
a
we've
sick
discussed we may have the same thing long-term with DPW. We've been without Mr. Ward for quite a while, and we don't know if or when he's gonna be able to come back, what's happening. And we're getting to the point of looking at maybe a temporary employee down there, so that spot's gonna have to be filled. And we may be losing more personnel, so, we have to take actions to fill these spots. We can't run on a 3-person sewer department with 1 or 2. We need 3. That's the number. And the DPW, it's not like we have 25 people down there. We can't afford to lose these people. They need to be filled back in. And anyone long-term that's gone. If our clerk is out long-term, then our assistant's gonna have to step her hours up to fill in the spot. So we are gonna pay, in most cases, to fill those spots. So I disagree that it's not gonna cost us anything. It will cost us. And it's already set that we can pay 15 days. But if that 15 days can become 90 days, then we're absolutely gonna have to fill it. It's gonna be an encumbered expense upon this board in this town. And it's not something we should take on for the town. If the town wanted to vote for this meeting and say, yeah, we'll take the expense, and that's the town's choice. I don't think we should spend the money that way. If people have vacation time and say, you know what, I have 300 hours of vacation, I'll give 10 hours of vacation into that. Convert it to cash, and that's available to help somebody in need, that's a great way to go. And that's a real give. That's not a, here, I'll give you something I'm not gonna use. And I'm willing to
No, I
set
follow
that up
what you're
and
saying.
entertain it, but not the sick. I don't think that's a wise way.
But donating vacation time for a sick bank, though, not
Right.
vacation time for
Right.
any personal time bank.
Donation to the sick
In
bank.
other words,
must
it's not
be-
like I want a
must-
2-week vacation and I have it.
No, it's not.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure I was
No.
hearing you
If
correctly, because
people
that
wanted
makes sense to
donate for
me.
sick bank, if someone is extended or they have trouble, or, there's a plethora of things that can make you want to stay out for a while, and sometimes you just can't afford that luxury You know, you don't need to be there 24 hours a day, and you can work your work days, but you'd rather not. And if that's available, that's a good thing. But it needs to be donated by people that want to donate it, not us giving everyone else's money from the town for it.
Right. Jim?
Well, talking about all that, as far as what you're saying, Greg, and everything else, if you're going to bring something like that up, you have to bring it up. How many people on DPW have you got the union?
I don't
As far
know
as that DPW union goes.
I don't know the number, but
It's about 8%.
Well, that should be about 18 if I'm not too high.
Yeah, I was
What
thinking
you got for sewer
13. I
water?
thought we had like
Highway.
7
To the
highway
combined,
and
probably.
3 water, well, 2 water, 3 sewer.
You're at about, yeah, 11.
11?
11, 12, yeah.
Rough.
Well, what I'm saying is they've gotta go, I guess, between themselves and go through the union, what they're gonna pay or what you're gonna, because when I retired, I got paid a certain amount when I got retired. And they paid me a certain amount of I built up the sick time I had when I retired, they gave me. So you gotta find out exactly what their stipulations are as far as their retirement plan. Find out just exactly what's going on.
That's also what I would want to know is,
And we're also talking about when they reach a cap, hours that they wouldn't get otherwise
There's not a
throwing in
cap.
there.
I don't think there's a cap in that retirement plan. for the
Well,
union.
what I would like to know more specifically, less union, is what is our personnel policy regarding sick time you can accumulate and what you do or don't get paid when you leave based on accumulated sick time. Is it none? Is it 80%? Because that's another way of saying if somebody wanted to donate sick time, you cut 5% off of what you can get paid leaving. Or, in other words, we're saving future payouts by letting them donate today to a bank that might not get used until the future, but at least now the money is being, what was going to be paid for retirement is now going to be paid for sick. Or not retirement, but you're almost like your severance, you're leaving the job. So that would potentially, like you're saying, still not affect the town paying more money if we can do the money and show it actually works. And I'm not saying we can't.
Mhm.
But I still kind of liked your first thought of, well, if somebody wants to donate vacation, that's something that right now we have, what, a total of 80 hours? How many hours can someone accumulate in vacation?
I don't think there's a cap. Oh, no, I'm sorry, you can only carry over 2 weeks. Or half of your,
Carry over 2 weeks and then you can use whatever you can accumulate. And so if you can get 5 weeks, you can get 7 if you carry 2 over from the year before, which I think is like the max our personnel policy now gives you, is a potential of 7 weeks when you've been here 15 or 20 years. Kathy?
But in the 33 years that I worked here, there were people who abused their sick time. And now you're gonna, the bank is a good idea, I think, but now you're gonna fill the bank, and these people who use their sick time, abuse their sick time, are gonna ask for more sick time. I think it's gonna cause a lot of heartache for this board to figure out, should they get it, should they not get it, are they sick enough, are they not sick enough?
Right, if someone's taking every Friday off for
Absolutely.
whatever, and then some medical issue comes up and they need sick time, it's their fault they don't have it. And
Absolutely.
why should they be rewarded
And then
afterwards?
this board is gonna have to
And
decide,
that's
are
what I
they
said.
sick enough?
My
And then
first
the other
thought there
point-
is, if that's the case, it's another reason why we still need a personnel board to cover certain things. They don't have to cover the whole personnel policy and all of that, but there is a role for the personnel board in this town. We just need people that want to participate. We only got one application to be on that personnel board if we were to try to recreate it. When we asked 6 months ago or a year ago, we got one application in,
Almost
and it was him. Nobody else even applied. But these are the things where it'd be useful. Again, not heavily time consuming, but when needed, you come, you pay attention. The Board of Selectmen still write the policy on how it gets to be used, but we allow another board, a personnel board, to read the policy and interpret it and apply it. Thus, it's still creates a little separation from the policy maker, from the policy enforcer, and the records, and looking at creating a standard so that, okay, this is the precedent on now you've got to maintain. So that board would have to look at previous precedents. They can't rewrite the story every time. It's got to be consistent. These were things that I would, if we were to go this far with it, that's where I'd like us to end up. That's my thought, but you look like you wanted to say something, Charlie.
Yeah, we had it where I used to work with the state, and Kathy, what you were saying for abuse, it was ripe for some serious abuse, because we could accumulate, believe it or not, sick time unlimited. We didn't get paid for it when we left, and then we'd have these people that were constantly using sick time. I won't say they weren't sick. I can't prove they weren't, but I can't prove they really were neither. But we were always a little skeptical, you might say. And then they'd really get sick. They'd have a heart attack or something. They wouldn't have any sick days. And it's like we accumulated a lot of time. It was like 10 hours a month or something. And, you know, if you're there 15 or 20 years, you can have some serious time accumulated. And for not to have it, and then all of a sudden they need to tap into the sick bank, and they've kind of abused the system. I'm not saying everybody that used the sick bank abused it, but that was a real problem, and it seemed to be the same people over and over that would get that.
The sad part about that is that now you're asking, there's a little bit of animosity in this town, there's for more. Does this town need it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, and that was.
sounds good, but it needs, I don't know.
That was a problem, and then you had to make the decision at the beginning of the fiscal year whether you wanted to put in. You couldn't just say in February, oh, so-and-so is real sick, I want to put in. And if you didn't put in, you couldn't participate in it.
I make a motion that we pass on this issue at this time.
No second.
Take no action on it.
Just as an FYI, so it's 600 hours is the cap under our personnel policy. The only way to get paid out is upon retirement. You can get up to 480 hours. Okay.
Right. But that's like another unfunded payout that when it just happens, okay, we got to come up with it.
Not gonna retire.
Yeah.
Retirement's the only.
You deserve it to retire.
Right, but that unexpected expense at retirement isn't planned or funded usually.
Is it only paid at retirement?
And so that's a bigger hit
Retirement,
if
no.
somebody actually reached that level.
But provided
Then-
that they have 20 years of service and they have to give the board a 6-month notification of retirement.
So if we get lucky, they tell us leading into a budget season. If not, they tell us just before budget ends.
But
I'm
they
just,
give
I mean,
But they gotta
but,
give you 6 months. There's no right before. They give you 6 months leeway. And they have to have 20 years here to do it. So it's very difficult to use that, to collect on that sick. So,
well, I'm not saying it's likely. I hear you. But I did realize that this email requested that I read the email, so I will do that. Faye Zukowski sent an email July 19th, 2018, to the Board of Selectmen and Andrew Golas, the town administrator. Good afternoon. I am writing today to request the board have a discussion at their next meeting to possibly establish a sick bank for the employees of the town to donate to or use from. It is my understanding that the police union had approved the establishment of a sick bank with their union contract. I had discussed this with Andrew upon my resignation, and he explained he did not feel that a sick bank was a good idea as it could be a liability to the town, and I cannot disagree with him more. However, in the past week or so, I have learned that one of the Barry officers, Trevor McNeil's daughter, is fighting for her life at Boston's Children's Hospital. A plumfund.com has been established to help this little family. In the description of on the Plum Fund, it explained that his fiance will be out of work, basically living in Boston with a baby girl, and Trevor is unable to take the time off, nor does he have enough sick time to allow him to spend these critical days with her. I do know that I have enough to help them, and am requesting the board establish a sick bank and a committee to oversee the sick bank. So I am requesting the board discuss and hopefully establish this fund. Please read this email as correspondence. Sincerely, Faye Zukowski. So, statement was made. She provided an example of when it seems like it might be a good use. We've also had several comments about where you'll never be able to prove it if it's not, but then how do you say no to someone that may actually be having issues? So we had our discussion to start with. We'll
Would you
put it
need
to rest for
establish
now.
Would you need to establish a sick bank? In this scenario, couldn't people just donate their time anyways if they felt like it?
Not legally.
No.
I think we have a motion and a second, don't we?
Yeah, you did.
Did you have a second on my motion?
Yeah,
too?
but this was my second discussion where I had to read the email.
Okay.
Yes, Claire?
We, at the Sterling Light, when I worked there, there was a guy that had family problems and that, and we donated sick time to him. We didn't have a sick bank or anything. But we donated whatever we had accumulated, you know, what we wanted to.
I don't know what the policies there were, or whether it was done to the letter of the law. I'm not saying it was a bad idea, but there may have been things that you did that you couldn't do today. Maybe you could do it then, but I don't think you can do it today.
It's sad if you can't.
Well, it's again, what it is money's budgeted for certain purposes. You go to the town and say, this is what we're gonna spend the money on, and then something like this comes up, that's not necessarily what was intended that money to be spent for. So without having a policy that allows that, people don't know that that is how it could be reused later after you vote at town meeting. So that's why I'm saying I think it's a fine line on what we could do today versus what you might have been able to do when you were with Sterling. And I don't know that timeline, so I'm just guessing. But I think that has something to do with it. I think some things make it a little harder for you to do that.
That's what's the problem is with our world today.
We
They're
have-
not willing to give like that, and
We have GoFundMe pages often people establish, and
Yeah.
people give quite generously to those. And if someone set up a GoFundMe page for them, they may find out that that's much more lucrative than this would ever
Well,
be.
that's what this plum fund is
Yeah. So
for this individual. But the thing is, it's,
that and the police association, I know the fire association, we certainly raise thousands of dollars, and we have people in trouble, we give where we can. Sometimes it's 500, sometimes it's a couple thousand, whatever the need is. And even we had a police officer, she had a fire in her house years ago. The fire department spent several $100s to buy gifts for her kids, because right before Christmas she lost her gifts. So I can certainly talk to the association too, they may make a donation for this, but I think donations and willing donations by people do give and they want to give, but it's not our place to give their money. Let them, they will do it themselves if they want to.
Right.
And I'm sure people will. I'm very sure people will.
so, with that said, call for a vote to table this for potential future consideration.
All right?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have someone looking to be on a committee, a Dennis Dextrader, looking to be on the Recreation Committee.
Fantastic idea. Make a motion to appoint Dennis Dextrader to the Recreation Committee.
Second.
Great guy for it.
Call for a vote.
We do have an opening, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
You'll be a good member.
Absolutely.
Okay, we also have mortgage discharge from the previous month's package.
Yeah, so council did review this pretty extensively, was able to confirm that all the conditions had been met with the discharge, and so now the property owner is looking to sell, needs the official discharge voted on by the Board of Selectmen, so that way they can sell the property.
Motion to discharge mortgage for Oswald at Marcioni, Pleasant Street. Pleasant Street.
Second?
Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Do have just a few things here for your signature, so I have them all tabbed out, ready for you.
One, pass one down, we'll swap them out.
You start signing, I'll start signing, we'll all sign. Just the one on each, in each package?
Yeah. I'll have Ellen notarize those tomorrow. This one.
It's dated July.
Yeah. This one's with,
Oh,
my
they
hand
have
sealed
to-
is.
You got one here?
Yeah, they're all saying the 16th. The 16th is what this one says. 16th day of July.
Oh, yeah, we'll just, if you want to
This is
just.
class
Yeah, that's the
June.
only one that didn't have the
Yeah.
day written in.
Should, I mean, we can,
Yeah, you just strike it.
we like to, when the strike July,
You
just
wanna
write
just-
August, or just write, strike the date completely.
6th.
I'm just gonna strike July here, because we don't have the date
August.
yet.
Is that gonna make this not usable now?
Yeah,
But
just
with
put
an
it-
initial?
Yeah, just initial next to it.
I'll put- Why don't we let you do all of them?
Yeah, I got you, and then it'll be
Yes,
the
it's-
chairman's initial or
Right, so
whatever.
they're all initialed by the chair as a date change, and we'll have them all signed.
Perfect.
Just, strike July, as I just striking that right the best. Don't wanna hold them up when they get that and it's the wrong date on it.
Yep. It's another 2 weeks.
And the sale falls through. I mean, I did try to do this
Thank you.
before, it just wasn't cleared by council, was all the issue.
Okay. Request to use town property, we'll do that one real quick. Christmas
Okay.
and Berry, is
So I
that?
didn't know what, this was actually just a carryover from the last one, I didn't know whether or not you guys had taken any action on it before. Kinda as I was going through, I realized that I hadn't really sent it off to all the other departments yet, so I'm just gonna have to request to table that
I
one
thought
for right
we
now.
did.
Okay, table that. Alright. Was that the
We said all.
whole
these
common
companies-
one? Or just the town hall one?
The whole common one.
Okay.
I thought we did that.
I thought we did that.
You probably did, I haven't fully crossed the Ts and dot the
I'm
Is.
very sure we did.
Sure you did.
Okay.
I'm very sure we've done it.
Cool.
We'll revisit just to make sure the next time around.
Yeah. I think we have plenty of time where we can just.
Yes.
State primary election warrant, 2018.
Make a motion to approve and sign the state primary warrant.
Second?
Election warrant.
Tuesday, the 4th day of September 2018. Okay. Any discussion? It's a heavy topic, I know. Okay, all right. Call for vote.
Aye.
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 We gotta sign all the pages?
Yes. That's what I said.
Yeah, you
That's
just
okay.
hit them all, I'll hit them all,
Well,
I'll hit them all.
We'll just start with one and pass around. If you both start with one, then I'll hit these and pass them as I hit them. How's that sound?
Let's see. Given under our hands this 6th day,
Yes.
Yep.
I'll let you do.
I'll catch them on the way through. Okay. These are the complete ones. 7 of them? How many do we do?
7.
It's like 8, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. Okay. All right. We might have
That's 4.
signed 8, but
Yeah,
only 7 might get posted.
7 copies in that, Rachel.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Originally on the agenda, we had a special event broad, but talking with the department heads, they didn't have sufficient information back to sign off, so I pulled that from tonight's agenda for the next meeting.
All right then. The agenda for today, we didn't have any correspondence other than I did get a letter from Massachusetts Office of Disability regarding the Municipal ADA Improvement Grant Program. So, Massachusetts Office of Disability is pleased to announce the Municipal ADA Improvement Grant Program application and selection process for year 19. Eligible applicants include any Massachusetts city or town. These grants will support capital improvements specifically dedicated to improving programmatic access and removing barriers encountered by persons with disabilities in applicant facilities throughout the Commonwealth. Project grants of up to $250,000 will be awarded to successful applicants to remove barriers and create and improve accessible features and programmatic access for persons with disabilities throughout the Commonwealth. Planning grants will also be awarded to assist a community in creating or updating a self-evaluation or transition plan required under Title II of the ADA. There's more, but it's just state letter. If you want, you can ask for a copy of it. Do we have any thoughts of any plans with potentially applying for any of this, or do you know yet?
So the ADA grant, I've been trying to kind of scratch my head on it to see if there's anything that we really have outstanding that we could talk about. And I know that normally they want to see transition point. Typically it gets the most points if it's in your transition plan. And I think our last one was approved in 4, maybe, so I don't know if anything on the list is cool. But I can try to review it and see if there's anything clearly outstanding.
Maybe the bandstand.
Well, that's the thing. You know, the bandstands would be definitely an applicant, but it's the question of how much would need to be put in to make it that full ADA compliance. You know, you're talking about the ramp with a sidewalk that goes to it, or would, you know, are you talking about a lift that goes there? I mean, ADA compliance would be great there, but I don't know if it could really achieve it without making it a very large expense or a very...
You would have to wrap it halfway with the ramp. It would be an extensive ramp to get up.
You might be able to
It's
create
doable,
it.
and you probably need another handrail inside at different height for wheelchair height. So you need your guard, which is going to be 42 inches, and then you have a
I think
handrail.
we're more
which is
looking at
typically 36.
potential temporary, bring it out when you need it, put it back when you don't need it.
I think that one might be a better use.
So for that amount of money, you might be able to get something that can be stored.
Yep.
Then for an event, have it brought out, set up, have a certain railing section that gets removed for a lift to allow access. You know, in other words, 250,000 might be able to do all of that.
Right. I don't know how you store a lift easily.
The one thing that
Possibly, or possibly ramp. They do make aluminum ramps that you set up.
So that's all. I know that you have a committee talking about what they might do with that already.
so I think I heard that from, we did get a couple of bids back for the revitalization. And basically kind of put in some new stairs, scrape the old paint, redo the bulkhead area, ventilation into the basement. like
floor, the top?
on the bandstand floor, so grinding it down and epoxying it. It was kind of
Wow.
like a $36,000
That's
change.
exorbitant for that.
Exactly, so I
I
kind of
just
threw it
did-
back to, so I took the change orders
Wow,
and threw it
that's
back
a
to the
lot.
committee. And I said, basically at this point, our options are, you know, we can try to beat them up on that price for the change order and ask them for, you know, some credits or something like that. We can take it under advisement, reject the bid and rebid the project, or we could just not go forward and do the epoxy. So, and depending on what the condition really is of that flooring. So, we have a couple options. I've kind of put it back to the common committee at this point to review, give me a recommendation. Once they give me a recommendation, I'll give that the final overall to you guys for final approval.
Okay.
So that's where we're at. I was hoping to bring the actual final scope to you, but once we had the meeting, that kind of pointed out a few things. It was kind of like the intent was there, but it wasn't in black and white, so they had so, you know, there was a few things that we kind of challenged back and forth, so want to make sure that everything's done and people don't look at it and go, well, they forgot to do this. So.
Okay. The other possibility is looking at the transition plan
Yes.
and re-upping it, and you can get a grant for that.
Yeah. We might be in a
So-
position where we might not be applying for it until next year if we have to do the transition plan update, but.
Well, I think the grant would be awarded to help you create the transition plan, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Creating or updating that.
$70,000, you could throw that away and do brand new. It seems exorbitant.
Anyway,
Pull it with projects.
I'm
I know it hurts.
I'm just saying it's,
It hurts.
It's,
Yeah.
you know, you would replace brand new for less than that.
okay, so selectmen's reports, next on the list. Do you have anything, Greg?
I just talked to Andrew today about a couple things. Concern again, as I brought to this board before when you guys were looking for an interim assistant, is air conditioners hanging out over the sidewalk up on Exchange Street.
Well, can you say that again?
There's 8 air conditioners that hang out in the sidewalk up there that are, you know, not anchored. They're not supported underneath. They're not properly tied to the windows. It's, you know, awful angles. You know, if someone bumps a window or lifts it up, those things will tumble to the sidewalk and kill someone. And looking into avenues to address it, there's really nothing I find in the code except for possibly covered under road and sidewalk safeties. The DPW superintendent can order them to secure them. I got to double check that. I don't know if Andrew got time to look into it, but I believe that's the avenue to get it looked at. And then he can give them 10 days to have them properly secured because they're not safe. So we'd have to have him contact the landlords and point out all the air conditioners. They really should have support brackets under them and or be in air conditioner boxes. They shouldn't be draping out of a window over a public sidewalk like that.
Okay.
There's
Can I ask you a little skill?
just an exchange, right there where all the storefronts are. If you walk into the Tomato Pizza, and look up, I mean, in real estate, you'll see all the ACs hanging out of those windows, and they're really, a lot of them are listing like they're not in properly. So even when you put them into the sashes, years ago, you had a wooden window sash, and those ACs came with holes around to screw it into. So you'd screw the top of the air conditioner to the upper sash. So you put it in the sash, and it can't fall out. Clearly, that's not done with those. They wouldn't be listing the way they do. And they also used to fit in, and the side pieces could be secured to the edges. And still, they recommended brackets, support brackets under them. Nowadays, I don't think you buy an AC that doesn't come with a support bracket. But there's none of them are there, and so there's nothing to prevent them from falling, especially if somebody pushes on a window. Kids fall out of windows and screens on them. So you can that window half an inch, and the AC's going out. And it may never happen. You could have 4 happen next week. I'm just saying we should look into connecting it and getting those secured. It's a very public place up there. You can wall on people off it up there, and it's a very real hazard. So. Obviously, Stetson was active again this weekend.
Yes. Yes.
That's and I got a contact for Andrew to possibly call on the state side that might be funding them some through the mental health part of the state, and hopefully we can get somewhere talking with someone that's concerned for the kids You know, they fund them because they're taking care of kids. And if these kids are out and loose and disappearing in the woods, obviously the kids aren't being looked after as well as they should be. And I think because they delay notifying us and delay notifying people, they're avoiding letting the state know just how poor their level of care can be down there. And I think it's another avenue to go, is to go above Seven Hills to where their money comes from, and have them look into it. So a phone call couldn't hurt there.
Well, I also agree they're the regulatory agency, so they make the policies that determine what Seven Hills has to do. And right now, Seven Hills' job is to call the state, not the local authority. And so if you can't get their authority having jurisdiction to tell them you have to contact the local police department, they won't. So you're talking about talking to the people that will tell them, you cannot not tell the local police. If you're gonna call the state police, you should be calling the local police.
And specifically that department, you know, the mental health and care department that I had the number for, they're looking out for the welfare of the kids. They're not so much worried about looking out for Seven Hills and their procedures. They want the kids taken care of. And if these are kids getting out at this rate, my guess is not being told. So they need to know this is going on, needs to be brought to their attention, because I think their interest is in taking care of the kids. So they can probably promote changes from above through regulations, rules, or notification stuff, something. It's another avenue to put some pressure on them, because they're not going to do anything apparently on their own.
Agreed. And the letter went out, went to Ann Goby's office, Donnie Berthium's office, both the, what were the other two state agencies? We had Department of Mental Health and, no, Department of Families and Children and Families, DCF, and Youth Services. So I know there was a second one that had the regulatory authority that was referenced in Stetson's letter to us about who they answered to.
So these two sent letters to Stetson, and Goby and Donnie Berthium?
No, we sent letters to all of them. The Board of Selectmen reviewed a letter created by Andrew. We all signed it, and we sent it to Stetson, we sent it to Ann Goby, we sent it to Donnie Berthium, the two state agencies, and I think there might have been one other person we made sure was copied in the process to get it out there saying, hey, we had, and we did it after that issue where the kids were found in Hubbardston, and there were a couple break-ins over the night before they found them in the morning, and so
Department of
we.
Developmental Services. Okay.
Thank you. So the letter went out about not quite a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and we haven't received a response from anybody yet. Understood, might take a week for them to get it, because sometimes it takes 2 days, sometimes for some reason it takes a week. And then who knows how long it's going to take them to review it, receive it, and figure out what they will or won't do in response. So we do know that it went out. So if you haven't heard from anybody or this board within a month, feel free to ask again, because at that point I think we should be asking them again.
Just trying to make a little more noise. Obviously, trying to talk to the school, they refuse to come in here and talk to us. We get nowhere at a meeting there. It has to just be stepped up a little higher. That's a start.
Yes.
I'll see what happens.
For me, I had 2 items. One is, we talked about drafting a charge for an economic development committee. Andrew started a draft and sent it to all of us to kind of get the ball rolling. I reviewed it, and I made copies here that I'll just share for you to review at some point. We don't have to, it wasn't on the agenda for a real discussion, but I just wanted to give you some copies to review and think. This is a track changes, but because I have a black and white printer, you got to recognize that track changes are underlined or scratched through, because it didn't give me the red font to say, hey, look at this. Here you go, Andrew, just for the record. So he created a really good baseline to work off of, and then as I do in my life, I review things and then mark it all up a whole bunch and add a whole bunch of things, and that's what I do for a living, in a way. So I just added a lot of things that for me, I would just like to see in committees in general, kind of get more into the details of their role, who they speak, who they answer to, who they share with, how they develop their own hierarchy, chairman, things like that. Terms. This is not something that's intended to be a one-time charge. It's intended to be, again, another committee, if we can get the right people involved, that will continue to work with the town and help us find ways to economically develop that work for the people that live here, and in a way work for funding what the town needs funded. So you kind of need both to make it happen. I do believe that economic development also does work with the planning board, zoning and all that a lot too. You need to look at areas and grow with it. But I believe economic development is actually a Board of Selectmen thing where we work with the planning board. It's not economic development being a division of the planning board. So I kind of rewrote some of the words you wrote here more to say that you're working for the Board of Selectmen to, so if we say, could you go get this info or could you help us with this? And then the planning board says, ignore them, no, go do this. They're not trying to figure out what board they answer to. So I spoke more to you answer to the Board of Selectmen, but you also work with and advise the planning board. You work with them, you share information. It's not a hold it back, don't share your information. It's don't feel like you're getting direction from a whole different bunch of boards. And that's just my personal opinion, is it was something that I thought needed to be clarified, because I also clarified in the beginning that this Economic Development Committee's role would also be working with the Regional Economic Development Planner that Hardwick got the grant for, and we agreed to the first year of 4 or 5 towns? 5 towns working under a regional economic development planner to try to come to more regional things at work. But also we got a grant to have an economic development plan created, or at least the first stages of a plan created, that CMRPC is going to work with us on, that's specific to Barry only, not for the region. So this group would be timely to get the right applicants involved and get started sooner than later, whether it's from the business community, the farming community, whether they're familiar with infrastructure, whether they're familiar with zoning. All of these people can play good roles in economic development because they can all bring something from different areas and kind of build the committee to help us. They could also just use someone that understands accounting and finance. I mean, that always helps. You know, someone can say, hey, this all works, and someone says, yeah, but if you amortize that, it doesn't make sense. You know, things like that. So I'm looking for generally anybody that wants to help Barry business succeed within the framework of what the town wants. So in other words, it's not, hey, this will work, just put it here and make it happen. So we need a balance on this committee. Andrew suggested 7 people on the committee. I suggested 5 because I don't know if we'll get 7. And I also think 5 might be enough for right now. Maybe 7 becomes important when we really start building. That was just my thoughts. We'll get into discussions later. I just kind of wanted to lay it out. What we're trying to do, and hopefully at the next meeting we'll put this on the agenda and maybe actually get a charge discussed, approved, and then be looking for applicants. Unless the board disagrees, if anybody's interested in applying, I don't see any reason why you couldn't start the application process now and just get it on file. I'd hear from any of you if you disagree with that and you'd rather wait for the charge to be final.
5 and 2 alternates, so we can still take up to 7 if we want, and that way if somebody decides to drop out or can't make meetings, we'll still have enough people to move forward. So why don't we say 5 and 2 alternates, and otherwise I like it how it's written.
All right.
This will be on the computer.
Yep. Put it on the town's website, we'll advertise it through the Facebook page.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to discuss, we kind of already brought up, and that was getting back to Stetson and the recent concerns from there. And I know people are asking, I don't have an answer yet, I haven't had a chance to follow up with the chief of police, but apparently some people were bothered that they didn't get the reverse 911 call when the last 2 residents ran away. I think it was yesterday.
I heard that.
And I found out about it actually on Twitter because I saw Telegram and Gazette make a comment about it. So I think we need to look at more of, do we think these people are a concern? That shouldn't be the only reason we determine whether it's a reverse 911 call. Sometimes it's, you need to find out, okay, is it still going to get out so other people are going to wonder why we didn't do it? 2, how much of is it on us to make the decision for someone else as to whether they want to be prepared for a potential issue or not? In other words, if they have their phone and they're 100 yards out in their backyard hanging around doing nothing, just looking at flowers and stuff, they get a reverse 911, they might say, oh, I should go home and at least lock up the house. You know, I want to lock my doors and my windows, so in case someone was running through the neighborhood, they're not going to jump in my house, grab something, and go. And I don't even know it. These are things that we need to be able to give our community some heads up and let them decide for themselves what they want to do about it, not make the decision before they have a chance to determine, is it safe? Because you don't always know what their concern is. These runaways may not have been any type of threat to the public when it comes to violence, hurting someone. They might have just been running for the sake of running. It doesn't help though if you don't tell people that someone is looking to be helped. You know, in other words, if someone's running away, my feeling is the police shouldn't not tell people, because if people see them, they're going to help you find them. By not telling people, you're making it harder to find them. I don't understand why you wouldn't put a notice out if the notice is just, there are some runaways, look for so-and-so. And sometimes you don't have to say it's from Stetson. You just have to say there are runaways if you truly believe they're just runaways. I'll leave that a little to the chief, but these are still things that reverse 911 can tell people, hey, someone's running around, look for 2 short people with brown and blonde hair. Yes, it's street. They both have brown and blonde hair. I don't know, but that's my opinion. I just don't think we should not tell people, especially with the recent history. You don't always know if someone ran away as someone you've got to be worried about until they do something. So I figured I'd make my statement on that.
And that's what's there for, isn't it? Reverse 911?
That's my understanding. And nobody said they got anything, so I don't know if it got called or if it actually got initiated. You know, whether the chief asked for it or if RECC intended to and it didn't work, some software, I don't know. I just know that nobody told me they ever received anything on that one Sunday. So, I have nothing more to add. Do you have anything?
No.
Any last comments?
I just had a few things I just wanted to pass along to you guys. Just wanted to make the announcement too that as part of the FY19 state budget, we got a $25,000 earmark for the fire department for equipment and apparatus. It's been very, you know, I kind of had this discussion with Andy at the beginning of the budget season about a lot of the big capital items that we had coming up in the capital plan, between the need for a pumper, need for forestry, you know, and future need of an ambulance, and how the fire department could be a real, let's say,
And a fire station.
and a fire station, but that could be a real burden on us going into the future. So anything that they could advocate for, they put the $50,000 originally in because that's what I had listed for the forestry vehicle. I thought it could be, you know, doable, and I think once it came out of conference committee, it got hacked down a little bit, but $25,000 should at least give us a good start.
Okay, that's good.
As I had said before, the online permitting, I'm working hard to try to get that up and going. I'm hoping that and once Sandy starts on the 14th, that I can focus on a little bit more on it. Hopefully get it up by the end of the month. So few more things I just gotta work on with that. Right now, the state has a housing capital grant, it's a capital grant application related to housing improvements for towns of less than 7,000 people. It's up to $100,000 worth of grant funding, and they kind of target it toward things that'll help improve your housing stock. And I know that it's been discussed before, the need of the town to look at expanding our cable services or our access to internet. So I've asked our governmental account rep to see whether or not she could give me a true survey of the areas of town that are underserved and how far $100,000 would go. And if I can get an estimate from them before the close of the grant application in 2 weeks, I'm going to try to put in for that.
Okay, have we not had that yet? We were talking about trying to get
We had
that
kind
cost
of a, we kind
estimate
of had
back
a-
in the day.
yeah, we kind of had a overall survey of the areas that have been served, but I am looking for a little bit more detail than an actual cost number. That's what I haven't gotten.
Well, we never got to the
We
point
never
of
got the
asking for
number.
that.
I
We
think
never
if
got
you
the
had
number.
miles of road,
Mhm.
they could give you a pretty simple number if you
Right.
told them how many miles of road
Right.
and how many connections, or the people might pay for their own connections.
And it even might be a targeted, maybe go for a targeted area to say, how much would it be to just run it down this one roadway? Or X amount of miles.
Yeah, but I think that's something
Cost
we,
per mile
Right.
would be the thing to do.
Cost per mile.
If they can tell us the cost per mile, the grant could say we can get X miles done.
Right.
And this would help, take over half or a third of our unaccounted for houses.
Yeah.
So it might be as simple as asking them for cost per mile
Yeah.
to run cable. Approximate is all it needs.
Right. So
we can go
I'm
that
hoping
way.
I'll at least cross the Ts, dot the Is on that, and have something to at least apply for related to that. And if we're kind of really not heard anything, we're getting close to the deadline, I'll keep you guys informed if there's anything else I can think of that would fall under the grant program.
well, is it also potential helping old homes get, similar to like the mortgage program that we just discharged where people can get funds from the grants to help them improve their own house?
Right. It's
I know a lot of
It's the
those
first
grants
year-
are like
yeah,
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first year of this grant program. This was recently created by the state, and their recognition that the state needs to invest in affordable housing, and they made this grant program available for any town that has less than 7,000 people, and they consider it a capital grant. So typically, they're looking for something that might be identified as part of their capital.
Like new windows in an old house.
Could be.
$100,000 doesn't
Yeah.
go very far. You start doing windows in houses and you get 10, 15,000 a house, you might help 6 or 8 houses.
And then do you
Um,
become,
Still better than what we got.
Does the town become program administrators? Do we try to do it as a loan program, or do you do it? I mean, there's a few things you could iron out, definitely up for discussion. Maybe we can,
My point was
yeah,
just that
unfortunately, I just got the grant application stuff last week, and they don't give you a
Okay.
very, very long timeline. Maybe it's a matter of just bypassing the grant this year.
Feel free to
Well,
share it though.
My point was
And
that by
also-
going for the cable, we're gonna affect more people, which makes us more likely. The more we're gonna show we help with it. So if we say we're gonna do
Mhm.
windows and help 6 homes, or we're gonna do cable and help 150 homes, that's a big difference.
What I would like is the request to be, what would it cost to provide cable to every street that has electric service?
That's
In
what
other
I've-
words, existing poles for them to tag onto.
That's what I've asked for them to
And it-
provide me a survey.
But if you can get a cost per mile
I
for
mean,
cable, that's
A
we can
complete
figure out.
proposal, is that what you've asked for?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't care if it's 500,000, I wanna know what it is. This is what we've been asking for, cause
Right.
what we can't get in the grant, I'm still recommending we put into a potential article because it helps the town. It's not just helping individuals, it helps the town, otherwise,
The initial request was actually, that I said was for Loring Road, because I had 3 people reach out to me and all during my leave
it's a
period.
pocket in the middle of an entirely
They were-
covered, big, what, like 3 blocks?
Mhm.
That doesn't have cable, but the entire neighborhood around them does.
So that's basically what promulgated the question to them, to say, there's a need, we need to figure out what it is and how much it's gonna cost. So,
But we also, I know when that was coming up, we had more than Loring Road coming up though, where they don't have cable and they have a hard time getting internet access because of it.
given the timeline of the grant, it might be easier to look at one section for this year, and then next year get that full scope, because it might be harder to get to say in 2 weeks, give me every house that doesn't have cable, versus send somebody out here and just figure out how many people on this road.
Well,
we can see.
you could also ask for an approximation, how many houses could we put on for $100,000?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we wanna apply for 100,000 grants.
This isn't connecting houses, this is running the line down the road.
Right.
Individuals
Well,
can then
then,
connect
once again,
themselves.
Yeah.
If you get a cost
got
per
one.
mile, we just need to give the grant people something semi-solid in a number that says, we expect to cover this many homes, not because we're hooking up, but when we go by down that road and we go past 40 homes, we can say we've brought cable availability to 40 homes with this money,
Right.
or 80 homes or 100 homes. So we just need to know the cost per mile to run it, and we can pick the places and say, hey, we're looking at about this. I think we should get a number to them and try to get the grant in, and even if they decline it, at least next year, they say, well, we applied last year, we've applied a second time. They pay more attention when you've made multiple applications for it. You're gonna get higher up on the list than if you ignore it this
Mhm.
time, so I think it's important to get something in. And like I said, a cost per mile, we can pick the most dense miles that are uncovered now, population-wise. And it's not that we're hooking up to 40 houses, but we're giving the service availability to 40 houses.
Yep.
And that's what I mean by it. I
Okay.
don't expect us to tie in anybody in cable,
Right.
but.
I'll try to make it a little bit more focused and let you guys know what the outcome is.
Thank you.
August 22nd, Stetson School's actually having a presentation of a donation of about $1,800 to the Barry Ambulance Service as kind of a
Give back from the kids.
yes, that's basically it. And also the Economic Development Director, Todd Miller of Barry, who's actually the alternate for the planning board, was appointed to that position by the Economic Development Advisory Group created under the Economic Development Agreement. So he starts on the 13th. There's actually a Barry Business Community meeting tomorrow. He's committed to attending that to try to get to touch base and get the ground running there. So that's what I got.
And did we send a letter to Ann Goby, thanking her for the work on the grant?
I have not sent her a letter yet. I did talk to her on the phone on last Thursday when she personally
Would we like to
confirmed it.
send her a letter? 25 grand's 25 grand. It's
Oh, yeah.
have a truck, so I think we
Yeah, I
should
think
officially.
the regional school transportation too. That was a big one. That was huge.
Yeah.
We should be getting something back, I think.
Yeah. I'll draft a letter.
Okay.
You guys can come up with
Yeah,
something.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.